Okay.
Well, just a little bit about me. Although I do live in Bellingham, I am originally from Brainerd, just a few hours north of here. So I grew up in Minnesota, grew up in this area. It wasn't until I was 18 that I moved out to Bellingham. But when I was a kid, I definitely, I remember being young, being about 12, 13, and having my parents tell me, and in school, you have to go to school so that you do well in school, so you can get a good job, so you can go and get into a good college, get a good job, and make more money. And that never sat right with me. I've always been more creatively inclined. I'm a writer. That's my passion. And so I remember looking at my mom one day and saying, so the purpose of our life on this planet here is just to make money. That it doesn't compute with me. It just doesn't understand. And I got my slide. We didn't come here to just go to school, get a job, and retire. There is so much more to that. And so in regards to education, really young, by about 9th grade, I was sneaking out of class to go sit in the girls' bathroom and write. That was me as far as my troublemaking career goes. I was really bad about skipping school because I just thought that there was so much more to our life here. And when I came out to Washington and got into my 20s and spent, plenty of time just BSing around. I've been waitressing for the last about 10 years or so. And it was in about December that I came across the Michael Tellinger's Ubuntu movement on Gaia. And it absolutely changed my life. It just brought me to tears. This is the first time that I ever thought somebody else thinks this way. This isn't just me. There is more out there to life than this. And so immediately I got really captured with the Ubuntu movement. And when I got onto their global connector was how I met my co-founder, Joshua. And he and I met and immediately started just like bouncing ideas back and forth, just going strong. And this was in about January of this year that he and I met and started bouncing around. And when we got to April, my husband and I got married. Things were a little busy during that time, to say the least. And then immediately after the wedding, we just started going strong. Right off the bat, the first challenge that we came across, Joshua and I together, immediately was what about the cities? Again, one small town is so inspiring. I'm so excited about what's happening up in Canada and other places around the world in these small municipalities, that this is really starting to take place. But for those of us here still in the large urban communities, still very stuck in the system, what can we do? What are the grassroots approaches that we can make, little changes we can make to try and implement these ideas into our communities? Our first meetup that we had in the end of April, we kind of went out on a limb and we titled it "A World Without Money." And we are in a very little more open-minded area, I think, in Bellingham, Washington. Definitely a little bit more of a hippie community in a college town. So these ideas go over fairly well. But we had about 15 people or so show up for our first meetup, and it was really, the intent was just to inspire. It was during my preparation for this first meetup that I began opening Pandora's box and started discovering all of the other organizations aside from Ubuntu contributionism that are also trying to make these changes. And this is where I realized how connected we really are. This was my first discovery of the conscious resistance. I think everyone here is pretty familiar with. We've taken a lot of ideas from them. Free Worlder and the open economy. My favorite part about Colin Turner's approach is how clean the language was. This is one of the first times of talking about a moneyless society that I could, in language that I could talk to my mother about, that I could talk to my family and not get met with immediate brick walls. Urban farming guys, if you're not familiar, I highly recommend looking them up. They've got some amazing video footage on what they've accomplished in Likens neighborhood in Kansas City, Missouri. And just a little local one is I have some very close friends in Bellingham that has started their own nonprofit organization up in the top right, Cascadia Volunteer Advocacy. And they are doing amazing things in the areas of homeless outreach. And so they put together, I'm part of their group as well, they put together care packs for the general hygiene products. We do community feeds with organic meals and really nice food that we try and, rather than, a lot of our homeless shelters in town, in Bellingham, because our homeless population is very great. It's a very, very large problem in our area, Bellingham, Seattle, but it's become very much a concern, the amount of people we have in our street community. And so part of our feeds is actually providing a compassionate social experience. We do not just usher in and push them out the door. We invite to have seconds. We have people that we bring on specifically for hospitality, just to give these people conversation and treat them like fellow human beings. Part of the CVA model is to provide a compassionate social experience, which is just the one thing that these people need, more than food and shelter, which is incredibly, of course, are important, but they need to feel like people. They need to feel like humans, like they are connected into this world. And so these are just a couple of the things that we really took inspiration from. And along with that, when I was preparing for our first meetup, while I was presenting this this topic of how connected we are, because that's what it just brought, was how much these ideas are spawning up everywhere now, is that week I also got emailed from the Ubuntu national team. They emailed me a list of 94 different collaborative partner organizations. And that just blew my mind of just, how many are out there. Of course, we don't hear about them or see them on any of our mainstream news, and we all know why, who owns those. So, but once you really start just opening your mind, your eyes, they start popping up everywhere. It's really, really inspiring how many more and more and more keep popping up. So the challenge too, now that we see all of these amazing organizations popping up, so many people are brainstorming and envisioning how like a future cooperative society could look like. So the next challenge is, how do we get there? What are the grassroots approaches that we can take to get from here to there? And that became one of our first challenges. So it starts with an idea. And shortly after our first meetup, one of our attendees hosted a free community meal in his backyard. And so this, it was really amazing, because where we had about maybe 12 to 15 people show up for our first meetup, he ended up with about 30 in and out throughout the day, where just the sole model was just come have some food and have some conversation. Let's talk about how we could bring some of these ideas into fruition. And that was the first time that Skillshares got brought up in conversation, was in that backyard. And how it came up was a gentleman who was hosting, he was looking around at, this backyard full of, the sod, the fake grass, and he said, I would love to rip all this up and start some permaculture and get some changes going in my backyard myself, but I'm only one person. I can't do it all by myself. And this is where we started thinking, well, okay, so what if one weekend, all of us together all went out and whipped out my backyard garden, and then next weekend, everybody goes back and whips up their, garden. So these ideas, that's where it first started coming up. And so then we started running into more challenges. And I think everyone can kind of maybe resonate with this. The name Ubuntu has been one of the biggest challenges for us in our outreach. Has been the number one thing is the confusion with the Linux software, with the open source software. I can't tell you how many people that I started having conversations with, and when I said the word Ubuntu, half of them brick wall, just immediately assuming that I didn't know what I was talking about, or that just immediately, why are you talking about software? So this was one of our first challenges. And the second is within this age right now of everybody with their smartphones and the ability to look anything up on a whim was looking up things regarding Ubuntu and Michael Tellinger, and immediately seeing things like ancient aliens and hidden origins, and then just nope, brick wall one more time. So outreach, this was our biggest thing, is finding an all-encompassing approach. How these are ideas that can be applied to anyone, and these are ways of life that can benefit all of us. So how can we find an all-encompassing approach to connect with the people that aren't just automatically resonating with these ideas? Again, my family. This is one of the biggest ones for me was my family, and this is something I'm very passionate about. It's the first time I felt a calling in my life, and how can I talk to them and actually have them meet me on my level? And I do believe it's possible. So we came up with our own little chapter in Bellingham, which is called the Identity Movement. And there's a lot of labels that get imposed on us throughout our lives. And the Identity Movement, we are encouraging you to peel off all of these labels and become your own author. You decide what defines you as a person. We decide what defines us as individuals, as communities. And so really being able to dig down into your values and find out what defines you. So our vision, when we came down to trying to clear up our language, trying to really hone in on our approach, one of the other things that we really figured out was that the idea of a world without money is not all-encompassing. Not yet. Not yet. We're still too stuck in this system. So we started finding other ways that what is all-encompassing. Autonomy is all-encompassing. For allowing communities to govern themselves, to be able to choose if you want to live in a currency society or a currency community, or in a little bit more of a cooperative structure like with contributionism. But choice is an all-encompassing idea. That is something that I have not run into any problems with so far. So our vision, to discover the true nature of individual freedom and consciousness through unity, community, and the pursuit of self-mastery. So phase one, getting into our three-phase vision, because we started deconstructing. We started saying, okay, we know what kind of society we want to live in. How can we work backwards, and what are the first things that we can do to try and bring this in? Well, I had, when we first started talking about Skillshares, I had this crazy moment of, wow, I don't have any skills. So, I'm a writer, I'm creatively inclined, I've been a waitress for 10 years. Like, what do I have to offer? And so part of our model is embracing self-directed education. So Skillshare Pod is a group of people coming together to reclaim their education. And I have found a wonderful definition for education recently that just really stuck with me, and that was, education is the sum of everything a person learns in their life, the sum of everything that a person learns to enable them to live a satisfying and meaningful life. That's it. Education and schooling are completely separate entities. So, self-directed education is education that derives from the self-chosen activities and life experiences of the person becoming educated, whether or not those activities were chosen deliberately for the purpose of the education. Everybody's opinion, or what everyone thinks of as having a satisfying and meaningful life, is going to be unique to each individual. Therefore, our education is going to be unique to each individual. This is why our imposed schooling, another reason why it does not work. So we are trying to encourage self-directed education, and that we have all the abilities to learn anything under the sun. We are in an incredible information age right now, that just a few clicks of a mouse and you can learn pretty much anything. We are beings with unlimited potential. That is fact. It doesn't matter how old we get, we can always learn more. Even as our brains develop more and continue, we still just have to find the new ways to learn, but we never stop learning. And general education has taught us what to think rather than how to think. One of the methods that we've been really trying to encourage with our members, because as we go through this presentation, you'll be seeing some different resources that, that we've been trying to provide to our members to help every step of the way. And the trivia method is an amazing, amazing method of critical thinking and learning that has been completely lost in our current education system. And this takes the grammar, logic, and rhetoric and puts it in that order. And grammar, so with grammar is the what, the where, the who. The logic is going to be the why. And rhetoric, our missing piece, is going to be the how. And rhetoric truly is the missing piece in our education system, and that is the method of teaching. To teach something once is twice learned. So, yes, definitely. This is we do offer some introductions into the trivia method, some wonderful summaries and PDFs that I'm happy to send off to anybody. By the way, as after this we can get email lists and stuff. If you just go out on the street or go out into a bookstore and just buy a book on the trivia method, it's going to be really overwhelming. It's going to be really overwhelming. It's very, very deep and a lot of big words. But we found some really, really wonderful summaries and on the subject that just has really helped me in my own areas of critical thinking. And we have our learning pyramid, and this I really love for a visual model of how we retain information. So for example, right now, as a lecture, maybe you retain about 5% about what I'm saying, into the reading and demonstrating, all the way up. Teaching others is the best way to retain information. 90% of the information will get ingrained in you. So, oh, my picture's gone. That makes me sad. Well, I had a fun picture of myself doing my first Skillshare presentations of how to harvest sea salt from saltwater. And this was just one of those fun things again in the beginning where I said, I don't know what I would teach. I don't have any skills here and I want to teach. So I started looking around my house and looking in the kitchen at what things do I have in the house that I can only think of getting from the store. And one of the first things I saw was sea salt. And since we live right next to the ocean, I looked up on the internet how to do this, and in about a day or two I had gone out and got some water, did the experiment, and I did all these pictures and documented the whole process. And by making a presentation, putting together a presentation, bringing it in to show the group, I learned so much more about saltwater and the benefits of sea salt than I would have ever learned otherwise. It was really incredible, and then also went into a whole other rabbit hole about iodine that just it really can be a rabbit hole. But the point is that to be a presenter in a Skillshare, you do not have to be the master. In fact, we encourage you not to be. This is about learning. This is about us being able to learn together, and that in the act of teaching, you are just learning something that much more. Gosh, all my pictures are going away. Well, that's okay. A few of our past Skillshares that we had, just a couple. My co-founder did the 5 principles of learning anything, and if I was versed enough in that topic, then I would be happy to tell you. But we'll skip that. And the trout fishing action day.
Is that available on your website?
Yes, and
okay.
Thank you, actually. We do have a recording of Joshua doing his presentation on our website that anyone can go and look at as well. We've done reducing waste. We've got a new partner who he is his own mushroom forager. He creates mushroom tinctures, medicinal mushroom tinctures, and his story is just phenomenal because he actually is a self-cured cancer survivor. He had leukemia, and he actually was able to use his own medicinal mushrooms to completely cure himself of cancer when they weren't. Wasn't looking very good for him.
When you say medicinal mushrooms, is that with psilocybin? Or is that the kind of mushrooms that just grow naturally?
Just naturally. Washington is a really amazing place for a lot of mushrooms out there. And so that is an entire area that I have very little knowledge on. But it's wonderful meeting the people that do have these stories and have these ideas. And he's given 1 or 2 skill shares with us, and we are hoping to plan an action day with him coming up soon, that he can take us out and actually show us some of the areas for foraging. Core body movements. Recently we just did it with someone who studying a lot of Tai Chi and other things, and so he just kind of brought us into some really important core movements, and that was really fun recently. Embodied eating was a really nice one, where she just talked about us being a little more conscious of our eating and our food, not just what we eat, but actually how we eat and slowing down. And just a small one, even just a sewing circle, these little things where, you know, we had a week where we didn't really know what we wanted to put together, and so Gal said, well, can I teach everyone how to sew on a button? And surprisingly, I had never sewn on a button before, so, and now I can all of a sudden, I can mend my work clothes all by myself. The action days have been really, really fun. Yay, I finally got pictures to show. The action days have been really inspiring, and the action day with Hugo Culture was phenomenal. And this was a really wonderful day to just show us what we can accomplish as a team. And so on this this day, this gal's property, we went out, and she was just an awesome gardening nerd and just enjoyed every second of it. She gave us a little demonstration on building a hugel, which is, you know, making raised garden beds out of fallen debris and composted material. And so she had a whole list of projects for us that day. On top of helping to build her newest hugel, we also had a list of about 15 different items to harvest. So she set us each up. We had about 10 of us, I think, that day. She set each of us up with a job and taught each of us how to do that job. And after about 5 to 10 minutes, we would rotate and teach the next person what we had just learned. So throughout the day, you know, I was just amazed at like all of the things that we learned. We harvested, oh gosh, peas, beans, broccoli, and some berries, some, what were they? Anyways, after we were done, she and her husband then made us dinner with all of the food that we had just harvested. And it was just a great day. In about 3 hours, we did all of this. And she was just blown away. She said she would maybe have gotten to one of those projects all day. So just kind of showing what we can accomplish, where then the rest of us, we got this amazing learning experience and a great day in the sun. Just really, really enjoyed ourselves and didn't break a sweat. I mean, it was fabulous. So right now, what we are working on is creating specialized Skillshare pods to master skills, rather than just dabbling in little things here and there and getting little basic introductory courses. We are now trying to form specialized Skillshare pods so that we can become masters of our skills. You can pursue your passions. Think about something like, what's a dream that you have or something that you want to accomplish in your life. It doesn't matter if it has to do with growing food, has to do with learning a subject, building a house. I mean, whatever it may be, that could be an opportunity to start your own Skillshare pod, because as becoming a pod leader doesn't mean, again, that you are the master. You're the facilitator. You're setting the pace. You're setting, you know, the curriculum, but you're learning right along with your group. I really enjoyed some of the inspiration that we took from conscious resistance on some of this in the Skillshares of, you know, okay, well, one person in your group knows CPR. What good does it do to just have one person having this information? Let's teach the rest of the group. And these have the opportunity to then spider web off and net off, and where each of those people can start even their own groups and start branching off that way. So we, right now, again, another missing picture. But, right now, our newest Skillshare pod, specialized pod right now, is actually around art. And one of our administration teams, she is an amazing artist, and so she is starting her specialized pod for in the areas of art, and it's very wide range. And definitely the area that we're in Bellingham, it's quite a hot thing. So we're really excited. The role of a pod leader. I found this picture recently while I was getting these together, and it really stuck with me. The first responsibility of the leader is to define reality, The last is to say thank you. In between, the leader is a servant. And so just recently, we came across servant leadership. And this is really just putting structure to kind of what we've been already thinking. And so servant leadership is based in that your goal is, is to serve. Even though you maybe the facilitator, maybe kind of setting the pace, you are still a servant, and we're all still learning together. So listening, empathy, awareness, these are all very, very important traits for a pod leader to have. And just until we come up with a better word than leader, that's what we've been going with. And I'm sorry, did I go too fast?
Yeah, it's, yeah, thanks. Okay.
Can you make this slide presentation available?
Hmm?
to us
Oh, I
later?
sure can, yeah.
Then nobody has to worry about
Yeah.
taking pictures.
I sure can. And I also didn't get to, I was wanting to prepare a list of resources and links as well that I can send out and email after the fact. I prepared this in about 2 weeks and while planning for our trip to come here as well, so.
Yeah, so there could be a follow-up. You got an email from me, and everybody here, plus a lot of other people are on that. You can just reply to that,
Perfect.
and people will get whatever it is you want to attach.
Excellent. Definitely using the sociocratic methods in our decision making. Is everyone fairly familiar with this method? So this is a fully unanimous decision. So within your core circle, every decision is based on unification, where everyone, it's full consent, where a decision is not made until there is full consent. And this is done in circles, and basically with the sociocracy, it's circles within circles, and just linking out. And you've got your the core team, like whether it's administration or whatnot in the beginning, making the decisions, and as it goes out, it's all circles and circles, and everything is connected. All of the decisions are unanimous. This is so there's no hierarchy. And I'm still learning a little bit more about this model, but so far it has been working wonderful just in our administration team. So communication is very important in these things. Phase 2 is bringing our skill shares a little bit further with a mutual aid. And mutual aid is a voluntary reciprocal exchange of resources and services, and this is as ancient as human culture, but it's been lost recently in our Western culture in recent decades. This is about focusing on people's strengths and set of limitations, and to encourage people to use those strengths to help each other and help others. So how can we start taking our dependency back off of the larger socioeconomic structure and start funneling that exchange back into each other? That's a big part of the mutual aid. So sharing resources. Right near me is a phenomenal thing that we've come across for edible food tracking. Those not familiar, not sure what's familiar here and what's not. But being able to sell your harvest, to be able to trade, be able to find even throughout in Bellingham. We're actually going to be going out on might be a little late this year, but in the spring we wanted to go on a little trip around Bellingham to map out the seasons for all of just the random fruit trees, and we have blackberry bushes like they grow like weeds all over out there. But finding the good harvest times, and especially going back to with like our street community and being able to find the areas that they can get food without having to go and dive in dumpsters or go to the shelters every time. Cell 411, another, if not interested, is a really wonderful way to start bypassing the need to call 911 for absolutely every single emergency. And so this works off Google Maps, and it's a real-time management system and alert system. This is really wonderful for just taking our electronic age and being able to fit that into the mutual aid and being able to help one another. So the alerts are amazing. Whether it's, say you're walking in the woods and you don't feel someone's following you and you don't feel safe, and you can set an alert, and anyone in your area that that is already on this network and has agreed to basically things like the non-aggression principle of not using force. That these are trusted people in your area that you can send these alerts out and probably get way quicker response back than calling 911. Not to mention more compassion. It also has a live stream. It has the ability to live stream to YouTube. So for things like if you are witnessing a crime, you can immediately start recording and streaming, and it automatically live streams to YouTube. So even if they come over and smash your phone, that's already up there. Or if and this is built by and for activists. So also if you're witnessing police brutality, if you're witnessing these kinds of things that get brushed over, we can have real-time recordings. Disaster preparation is another big area that we've been focusing on with mutual aid. I'm not sure, I've been looking a little bit, I know in this area there's not as much high risk for certain disasters. Of course there's tornadoes and floods and of course the cold. In our area, we are very high risk for earthquakes. We are also along the coast, so potentials for coastal weather and that type of thing. So in Washington, they started this program called Map Your Neighborhood, and this is even though it's based in Washington, other states have been starting to pick up on this and start their own programs. But the Map Your Neighborhood, and I do have some flyers and stuff that I can pass out as well. They create an entire guideline for getting people in your neighborhood together, in your neighbors, and gives you the whole guide for the conversation to have and all of the steps to take so that you can find out what resources are available in your neighborhood, who has what emergency kits, that in the event of an emergency, you can all have a meeting place, you can have a plan. So that's been one of the areas of focus. Yeah. Okay. That's fine. That's fine. Our most recent mutual aid pod meetup, we did several mini presentations because we kind of do skill shares within our mutual aid pods as well. They just kind of carry a little bit different theme. I presented on the psychological preparation for emergencies, and this I got from a really wonderful book that. That talks about the, all of the preparation gear in the world will not help you if you're too scared to use it. So this kind of, I talked about kind of how our bodies react to fear and different ways that we can kind of mentally prepare ourselves for those situations. So, and also just kind of trying to avoid the fear mongering. I know it's kind of hard to think of, emergency preparations and especially everything that's been going on with the hurricanes and stuff, but this doesn't have to be fear based. This can, and honestly it can be fun too. We had, Justin presented multiple uses for duct tape, and I did like 15 different things that you could use duct tape for. We had a couple navigation skills from another presenter. My co-founder Joshua did Don't Get Caught Without a Space Blanket, and he gave us like another 10 uses that you could use for a space blanket. And yes?
What's a space blanket?
A space blanket is an emergency blanket. I actually have one.
It's like ones that come in the kits that you like assemble that you put like ramen and soups and stuff, like non-perishable items. It's like one of the things that goes in like a standard first aid kit. It's like made of Mylar, like the balloons that have like the shiny reflective surface, and like it also like you can like see through it even though it's like reflective. So.
But it keeps you warm. It's good to like.
It's like super thin, but it keeps you warm.
It's good to like 30-some degrees.
Yeah, it keeps you super warm.
Yeah, so it's an emergency blanket that's really.
And they're about this big,
Yeah.
fold out.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And then
Yeah.
they're super huge
Yeah.
when you unfold them.
They developed them for astronauts to use on the space shuttle.
They say.
Yeah, I was saying.
Yeah. What?
So sharing resources, providing emotional support, and prepping for emergencies are just a few ways that we can start funneling that exchange back into each other. Another, I didn't create a slide for this, but another area that we've been really focusing on is nonviolent communication by Marshall Rosenberg. And by finding our nonviolent communication or compassionate communication, but providing a structure that we can really quell heated situations, that we can really build empathy with each other. And something that we've been doing is going through the actual book, the Marshall Rosenberg's book, and we created study groups. And study groups of getting together once a week, and I'm going every week, we'll read a chapter. And he's actually got a companion workbook that comes with as well. But it's really an amazing way to connect with people that you wouldn't have normally, and for this intention of being more compassionate, building our empathy, and just learning how we can talk to each other. And the more that we keep going with these ideas, we are going to need the abilities to talk with many different kinds of people, and especially meeting resistance too. That's going to be, it happens all the time. So what more ways that we can be compassionate? Phase 3 is collaborative community network. And so with throughout phases 1 and 2, when we've got our pods and with the pod leaders, one of the most important things is nurturing the connections between the pods. This gives us the opportunity for collaboration on larger projects. Multiple pods can collaborate together. Say imagine you've got one group that has been really focused on growing food. And then you've got another pod over here that has been focused on building things. And this has been, their areas of learning and focus. So what happens when, after they've been in their own groups, they've been accomplishing these small group projects, they're getting on fire and they want to bring it up a notch. So say the group wanting to grow food says, I want to build a greenhouse. We want to build a greenhouse. But all of a sudden in there, well, we don't know, this isn't something that we've been learning how to do. So this is the opportunity to connect with other pods on these larger projects. And through the connection, this is where we can start using the contribution as a model just a little bit more. So they can collaborate together, say build their greenhouse, build their structures. And then everybody between the pods gets a chance to, reap the harvest. This is where we can kind of start working together. It's grassroots approaches, because using the full contribution as a model in the urban communities is very hard to do right now. Volunteering, we've been trying any chance that we get to go out into our community and try and connect with people. And one thing is that we're trying to kind of change the way we think of community service, because I don't know about anybody else, but I mean, community service to me always has this reaction of I'm in trouble. And I'm in trouble and I have to go and pay my dues to society. But it doesn't have to be like that. And this is just more ways that we can connect. And that's the biggest thing, is trying to connect with more minds. So from there in phase 3 is also being able to connect with local farms and businesses. And this is what I'm really excited about. This is where I look forward to being able to go and offer up my time, offer up our volunteer labor force to these local farms and businesses. But the first thing that I need is skills. That's one of the first things that we need, which is why we start with the skill shares. But once we can start actually having our people, have our population, we can start going and offering up to these businesses in the contributions, a model of how can we offer up our labor and receive the resources. So how can we buy-step the money system? So the monthly meetings for pod leaders are incredibly essential. This is where the opportunity to share updates, brainstorm new projects and goals, and nurturing the connections between the pods is the critical element that would take us from being scattered and separated groups to a collaborating, powerful network of highly skilled, self-educated individuals working together to create abundance. And this is our volunteer labor force is ready for contributionism. Right now, trying to just outreach on just the contributionism and trying to get people, hey, come and volunteer your time, but I don't really have anything to give you yet in return. This is one of our challenges, and that's why we love the Skillshares, because this is our opportunity to give value for free to our participants. So Skillshares has been something that everyone can really resonate with and agree with, and free education. So this is our opportunity really to get people to show up. Get people to show up, get involved, and it's a great way to start these conversations and get the ball rolling on contributionism and just outreach. So last I wanted to talk a little bit about learned helplessness and learned optimism. And this is something I just recently came across, actually just in the last few weeks, and just really took me by storm through listening to a podcast. And learned helplessness is this notion that nothing that we do will ever make any difference. And we've been conditioned this way. And so it's the same thing of how a 10,000-pound elephant, adult elephant, can be restrained by just a teeny tiny little rope. Not because it can't break the rope, but because he's been trained since birth with heavy chains that they can never break free. So by the time the elephant has actually reached adulthood, he doesn't even need the chains anymore. All it takes is a tiny little rope, and the elephant will never break free. So learned optimism is something that I think that we all need to really embrace, and that we have been, like I said, we've been really conditioned that nothing that we do is ever going to make any difference. I remember having a conversation with a family member a while back, and I was talking about the corruptness of our government, and the response that I got was, well, that's just the way it is. That's how it's always been. And that was such a defeated answer to me. And I looked and I said, but does it have to be? Does it have to be that way? I don't think so. And I think just like a little switching of thought and encouraging others to switch their thought pattern can be really, really powerful. Our lives are not determined by what happens to us, but by how we react to what happens. And a positive attitude is a catalyst, a spark that creates extraordinary results. So it's really important on where we are focusing our attention, and focusing our attention on the positive, because what we focus our attention on is what gets brought back to us.